What's going on, Betsperts? We are back again for another DFS show with my main man, Ryan Klos at PGA Splits 101 on Twitter. I am your host, Byron Lindeque at the Model Maniac, and we are happy to be here. How are you doing, Ron?
Very well, very well. Yeah, last week, congrats to Mackenzie Hughes. He's not a guy that was really on my radar.
No.
I think we had some good plays and fades last week. We kind of faded Henley and JT Poston. Both ended up missing the cut. Burmeister was a great value play. Me personally, I needed Burns to finish higher.
Yeah.
Played him in about 75% of my lineups. Made the cut, just didn't do enough. And I know you were having a great Sunday at one point. The Jets had just won at Pittsburgh. And then Emiliano Grillo is suddenly sitting on top of the Sanderson Farms leaderboard. And then he ends up with a snowman on the easiest hole on the course. My question for you is, did you break anything?
He broke everything for me. He broke my heart. He broke my morale, my soul, all of that figurative stuff. But I just thank God the Jets won. If they had lost in like epic fashion, things could have taken a spiral out of control. There's no knowing if I would even be here right now. I could be locked up in a loony bin. Who the hell knows? It was quite the day. And I was just sitting there and I texted my buddy as he hit in the bunker. I was like, oh no, he's going to make bogey. And that's not too good. Not even was it just a bogey. It just complete meltdown. So it is what it is. We're going back again this week. We'll see if we glutton for punishment in this department. So I don't know. Everything about him seems to make sense this week again. From a betting perspective, he's even cheaper. I think he's like 55 to 1 somewhere. So it's good stuff. But we'll see. We'll get to him. You think he's at the bottom of this this range that we're going to stop at anyway. So we've got the Shriners Children's Open this week, Ron. It's a birdie festival like none other. Sungjae Im shot minus 24 last year. I think, most winners are into the 20s usually. And it's going to be an interesting week. Give us your little course preview and some player quotes and get us up to speed with what we can expect from the course this week.
Yeah, so I love this event. It's a rather strong field for the fall swing season, and not going to go too in depth on the course itself because, quite simply, this is perhaps the biggest birdie fest on tour. And just some of the numbers, really quick: it has the highest greens in regulation, highest birdie or better percentage, fourth fewest bogeys, the fifth easiest par fives. It's the third easiest course to gain off the tee. It's the eighth easiest to gain putting. So you pretty much have to put the pedal down here from the opening tee shot on Thursday. Amazingly, 2 years ago, this course set the record for the lowest cut line at 7 under par, which when you think about 7 under cut line is pretty unreal. Nice. Something to keep an eye on is they did lay new grass here on the entire course. So it might play a little bit more difficult this year. And again, the reason being new turf is usually going to play very firm. The greens will probably be extra bouncy. And then you add on top of that, the summer has been pretty hot in the Vegas area. So the rough is the thickest it's ever been here at 2.5 inches, where it's usually around 2 inches. Also, the greens are going to be on the slower side compared to typically here, usually about 11.5 to 12. But this year it's going to be about 11 on the stimp meter. So slower greens. As for the course, so again, we have a par 71, 7,200 yards. It's a short desert parkland course, and it's going to play even shorter thanks to 2,700 feet of elevation. It's got Bermuda fairways and rough. The bent grass greens are the 5th largest on tour. Kind of the most important area that I'm targeting is going to be approach play combined with the ability to get hot on these greens. And, if we look at past winners, there are a lot of good players here, but also good putters. Kevin Na won here twice. Bryson won. Webb Simpson. Sungjae, of course, last year. Cantlay. So the proximity to the hole numbers is one of the very few areas where this course is actually tougher than average. And kind of digging deeper, one of the reasons for that is they tend to place the pins into these tight areas, kind of near the corners of the greens. So approach play is kind of the one metric where players who are strong in that area can get some separation on the field. 34% of approaches come from 100 to 150 yards, which is about 7% above the tour average. So you're kind of looking at, again here, I know we've been saying this a lot, but it's kind of a wedge fest, putting contest. And
Yeah.
whoever can get those approach shots the closest, and of course, you need to birdie every par 5. I think eagles are going to be key here as well. And just kind of going back and forth here as far as off the tee. No, I'm not placing much emphasis at all because you can look at it from a lot of different perspectives. So 7 of the last 9 winners were in the top 20 for driving accuracy here. But on the flip side, it also has the second longest driving distance on tour, and there's very little danger off the tee. So kind of because the course is so short, you don't even need to take driver off the tee in a lot of these holes. And so these shorter hitters can thrive here. Mm-hmm. And while the Bermuda rough can be unpredictable, the data, now with it being longer this year, that may change a little bit, but the data has shown that the rough is not that penal. But nevertheless, since you do need to score birdie after birdie here, playing from the fairway is going to be your biggest advantage. And so players have been very emphatic on that point when describing the course. So just a few quick quotes here, and I'll turn it back over to you. But, Martin Laird, who won here, said, if you get it in the fairway, you can be aggressive. Kevin Na, you have to drive the ball well and keep it in the fairway so you can control the spin. I know the rough is not deep, but because of the hole locations, you have to hit the fairway to be able to spin the ball. And then finally, good old Patton Kizzire. This is a bit more of a ball placement off the tee course. If you place your ball in the fairway and are accurate with your irons, you will have success. And then, of course, he closes by saying, I love a putting contest. So the players know you're going to have to get hot with your irons. You're going to have to get hot with your putter. And those are kind of the biggest things that we should all be looking for this week.
Yeah, I love I think we're on the same wavelength, like a lot of people will be this week. Something I just wanted to mention about the accuracy versus distance thing. I think a lot of accurate drivers of the golf ball are typically really good putters because they just have to be organically, because you're not necessarily hitting as many greens as the guys that can hit it as far. So you have to be able to putt better in order to keep your tour card. And then on the flip side, I was YouTubing this course from last year and just trying to figure out why I saw a correlation for around the green play being like 7% more at this venue than tour average, which to me doesn't make a lot of sense considering that the green regulation percentages are that much higher. So what is the deal with the around? Do you have a take on the around the green stuff, Ron? Why it's that important? Or is it just because people are like holing out chips and that's where they're gaining their strokes, not necessarily just saving par? They're actually birdieing holes from off the green.
Yeah, so first of all, the green regulation percentage is 74%. So we're talking about most players are not missing the greens. But I think when you do, because some of these pins are so close to the edge of the greens where they're being placed. So if you're short side, you're going to have to, obviously, usually the ball's going to run past the hole. I think some of the areas around the greens, as far as whether it's shaved off areas or just those areas there, are going to be a little tougher. And so, yeah, some of the players do kind of mention that, you don't want to be short side if you miss. And so, some of the guys looks like they're just settling for, and maybe that's why the proximity numbers are lower as well, because, or I should say higher, further away from the pins, because players are, a lot of these holes, they're just aiming toward the middle of the green because of some of the pin placements. And so, it is interesting that, around the green play, it looks tougher, but for me personally, with that high of a green and regulation percentage, I'm really not factoring that in much at all here.
I was also wondering if it just because with these flags so close to the edge of the greens, if these guys are chipping it in with their putter from just off the green, right? You got these much shorter chips that are actually on the fringe that is around the green metrics, but it's actually pretty much a putt. You're just putting 2 inches over the fringe. Anyway, enough of that. Let's get into who's actually going to be tearing this course up. And it's going to be jam-packed at the top of the slate here. We've got Patrick Cantley at 11-1, Max Homa at 10-6, Sungjae Im 10-4, Aaron Wise 9-9, Tom Kim 9-7, Taylor Montgomery 9-5. I think I'm going to open up to that range because I feel like those are you could throw Grillo in there at 9-3, but that's just a little extra stuff. We'll start off the next section with him. Let's end at Taylor Montgomery, start with Patrick Cantley. Ron, there's going to be some heavy ownership at the top here because these are the clear-cut favorites of the event. Patrick Cantley's 11-1, incredible course history at this place. Someone's going to go under-owned. Who's the sneaky play up the top here? I'm thinking it's kind of an Aaron Wise week. I think he's sitting in between Sungjae, who's also got impeccable course history, and Tom Kim, who everyone wants to play Tom Kim because, I mean, why wouldn't you want to play Tom Kim? So I'm thinking Aaron Wise is just in a little beautiful like vacuum sandwich over there that you can really take advantage of. He's obviously not the ideal play because he's not nearly as in form as the rest of these guys around him, but he can play as good as these dudes. So it all depends what kind of ownership shake out. But if there is someone that goes overlooked in this range, I'm thinking it's Aaron Wise. What are your takes in this top of the board, Joe?
So before I go, I want to hear your take first on Max Homa. So we have a kind of a conundrum here that people go back and forth on. So, obviously he has a very bad course history. He's missed 4 cuts in a row, but he's a completely new player this year. So how do you approach this with a guy like that with the course history?
I'm typically not that big of a course history stickler. I do notice that when you get lower down the board, like you mentioned last week, that was something that actually blew my mind. I'm a big fan now of applying course history to not as good a golfers down at the bottom in the lower ranges. Course history to a professional like Max Homa, who's completely transformed his game, means diddly squat to me right now. He's not even the same guy. He's, I'm going to take that avenue of this theory. I do know that looking at his history, remember right before the 40 net, I was saying he can't score, he can't go low on these easy tracks. That's also in the past though, right? So we know Max is a different player. If he's going to go also under-owned, hell yes, let's go. He's putting so well. He's hitting his irons so nicely, and his driver is just incredible right now. Just kickstarts the hole so well. Love Max Homa. I think even after the President's Cup, I mean, this guy is he's riding sky high confidence wise. So I love Max. Not going to bet him at those numbers, but absolutely, if he's sitting around 10, 12%, maybe, absolutely, I'll play him.
Yeah. So for me, yeah, it's real tough. Like when you look at the top 6, through Montgomery here, it's really tough to cross any of those guys off. You kind of think, okay, so what's the motivation level here for the top 3 guys? These are 3 superstar golfers. Why are they coming here to TPC Summerlin? So Cantlay, for example, this might be his last event of the season. He hasn't announced that he's playing in the CJ Cup next week yet, but obviously he's playing because he loves it here. When you look at his finishes, 8th, 2nd, 1st, he's also gaining. And a lot of people think, oh, I'm going to play Patrick Cantlay on a tough course because of his elite skill set. He's actually leading the entire tour on easy scoring courses. He's gaining 2.3 strokes since 2020. Of course, TPC Summerlin is about as easy as you can get. Yeah. So love Cantlay this week. Homa, of course, like we just talked about, and you said it, very good. He's a completely new player. He has, compared to the other players on top here, he's only gaining about a half stroke on these easy scoring courses. So that combined with the course history, and also, you can't play everybody up here. You're going to have to take some stands. So I'm passing Homa as the guy I'm not playing right now. Okay. When you go down here to Sungjae, of course, we've seen guys who are defending their wins. We see Max Homa defending the Fortinet. Of course, Sam Burns, a little bit of a struggle last week, but guys that typically, defending their championship, and I think you talked about that a couple weeks ago, guys are taking pride in that. And so Sungjae, of course, he never lets up. He doesn't take weeks off. He's got 5 straight top 15s. His scoring average on this course, he's played 12 career rounds here. Career scoring average is 66.5. So how can you not play Sungjae? He's also gaining 1.48 strokes on easy courses. So, Cantlay and M are my main 2 up top here. And then I just love Tom Kim. He opened at DraftKings. He was 35-1, and it stayed there for like literally 2 minutes, and it was gone to 30-1, and then it was 28-1. I think it's down to like 22 right now. Yeah. So I got in at 30-1, but I think this is a perfect course for him. He's not a long hitter. He catches fire on the greens. If you take out the BMW, where he still gained 4 strokes on approach, but if you take out that tournament, which is really the only one he struggled on, he's gained 2.1 strokes per round over the previous 7 events with 3 top 7s. And of course, everybody saw what he did at the President's Cup. So how can you not just think he's just going to go off here? And so I will have a whole bunch of Tom Kim And then finally, Taylor Montgomery. There's this Vegas narrative. He's a native here. He has back-to-back top tens, kind of his first two events on tour. Like, not many people do that. He might challenge Denny McCarthy for the best putter on tour here soon. So if you look, he's only played 4 career events on tour. He's gained 5.8, 11.2, 5.4, and 6.5 strokes putting. 4 events. Like, he has not gained less than 5 strokes, which is unreal to me. So he obviously knows these greens. He's played on this course a bunch. And so I have no reason to think his putting splits, at least for this week, won't continue. So, Aaron Wise, again, hasn't played in 5 weeks. And again, I know I'm being really picky there, but, Homa and Wise are the 2 guys up these top 6 that I will not be playing.
Okay. No, and that's exactly the thing. It's everybody, you can make an argument for pretty much everyone in the top of the board to win this damn thing. And I agree. I think that's why Aaron Wise might go a little under-owned, is for all the, you never know what he's going to be coming back. But Taylor Montgomery, Ron, that 11.6 or whatever that he gained at the 40 net, I checked it out, and only 3 other people gained over 11 strokes on the tour last season. Cam Smith did it twice. And this Taylor Montgomery looks like he's going to be rivaling for number 1 putter on tour. Absolutely. And Tom Kim, when he's putting lights, Tom Kim was one of the other guys that gained over 11 strokes last season on the greens. So we know that those guys can absolutely ball out on the greens. And I think you're going to just have to, last week, we all thought, Sahith was going to be money. And then he had the wisdom teeth issue, I think, and missed the cut. The chances of him missing the cut are slim. But we got lucky and dodged that bullet. I think that's going to have to happen what happens this week again, because you're going to have to leave some names off the board. And I'm having a nightmarish time trying to figure out who it is. I think I'm happy playing all of these dudes. It's just going to be an ownership-dependent decision for me, I think, at the end of the day at the top of the board, So I do have that 30-1 Tom Kim ticket as well. I couldn't pass it up in this field. I love it. This course, I love it. Next, range. Emiliano Grillo started off at $9,300. Cam Davis, Alex Noren, Tom Hoagie. Let's jump to the middle of the 6, the 8.5K range as well. Bottom of the 8.5Ks, Dean Burmester going up, Siwoo, Taylor Pendrith, Davis Riley, Brian Harmon. That's at like the next level of guys that we can kind of eye out here and are going to play a vital role, I believe, in this week's contest, because there's under-owned people in this range. There's guys that can possibly, pull out an upset, but they're not nearly as appetizing as the guys at the top of the board. And it's, just looking at their recent form, just looking at how they stack up for this course. Cameron Davis he seems like he's becoming one of those model nightmares for me right now, where he's just grading out exceptionally well all the time. But whenever he gets he just doesn't have that immense upside. He hasn't really been contending for a win lately, right? When you're looking at Cam Davis, it's all just T15s, T9, whatever. It's just right around there. Very consistent guy. The only time I played him hardcore because of his consistency, he missed the cut at the 40 net. So we got that going on for us. I don't know. I definitely think we're going to be going back to Dean Burmester. I love that call last week. I love him again here on an easy course. I know South Africans grow up on bent greens, where we're from, and he kills it when it gets easy. And it's just going to be fun to watch him play. I think he's more expensive this week, possibly a little less owned, hopefully. And then I got Taylor Pendrith also on my mind, who's going to be one of the chalkier plays in this range too, but hopefully not so much, because he let people down at the 40 net, right? And he didn't score well at the President's Cup either. So we saw he was playing nicely, just, got beat by Max. So it is what it is. But love those plays. And Dean and Taylor are 2 outrights I have as well. So I think I'm going to be mirroring my outright card a little bit in the DFS world, Ron. What's cooking on your side of things over there?
No, I apologize if I missed this, but did you say you're all in on Grillo again?
Yes,
okay.
I am in.
All right, just verifying.
We are back in on the Grillo train, top 20, outright, all of that.
Yeah, I love the top 20 stuff. My biggest thing with him is just, can he win? He plays so good, and then, going back to the Sunday collapse, he just seems like he has trouble finishing on Sundays. And I looked over his last 17 Sunday rounds. He's a negative player. So, to me, I'm not going to take any more of the, outright gambles with him. But, yeah, top 20, he's turning into a top 20 machine here. So
And I just want to say quickly on the outright number, it's like in the 50s still. We saw he was in contention. All you can ask for from an outright bet in the 50s is to be there. And if you don't have one bad hole and you avoid the disaster, all of a sudden you're doing well, especially if he's not playing hot going into Sunday and he's out of it by a few shots, doesn't have that pressure and gets himself into the mix from behind. I'm okay dropping a few bucks on him at 50-1, right? Like if the number went under 30, I don't think I would have gone back to him because I just don't think that's a fair number on him. So just my kind of thought process there. I was happy that I saw the number go up compared to going down, considering he was leading the tournament on the back nine, right? So anyway, back to you.
Yeah, so I'm a little different than you here. I absolutely love Cam Davis this week. And, 9,200, he ranked fourth overall in my model for the week. He dominates the par fives, ranks fourth in this field. A big thing for me this week is just it's opportunities gained. Like if you're setting yourself up with birdie chances inside of 15 feet, especially with the proximity issues here, can you get it close enough to the pin? And so he's second in this entire field and just putting himself in position over the last 36 rounds. And then when you look, he's also third in birdie or better's gain. So he's also making those putts. Let me see, looking here, as far as, bent greens, again, bent greens by far his favorite greens to putt on. And just so him overall, and so a lot of people, say, oh, what about on approach? You need approach here. He's 12th in this field in approach. So he kind of covers all the bases here. Fairways gained is his one thing he struggles with. Again, the rough, we'll see what happens, if the rough ends up being more penal than other years. But I do love Davis here. I love Tom Hoagie dropping down there right at 9K. So Hoagie for me, it's all about his irons. He's got 3 recent top 12s, 5 of 6 events here. He's finished. He's made the cut, and he's got 3 top 25s on this course. So he's the kind of guy. He's either going to gain 3 strokes putting or he's going to lose 3 strokes putting. So I'm going to take my chances on a course like this, where I think his irons can separate him from the field.
Yeah. And
so that elite iron play is what kind of pushes me over the line with Hoagie here. Dropping down, Davis Riley, he's real tempting because, again, he's putting himself in position. He's third in opportunities gained. He's 9th in approach. But again, for me, it's kind of similar to Grillo. He's just, when he gets to the weekend, it's just all downhill from there seemingly. So I'm going to lay off him this week. I think Taylor Pendrith at 8,700 is underpriced here. We all saw what he did kind of leading up into the President's Cup. And I don't know if people will, I don't know what his ownership is checking in at the moment, but, maybe people kind of saw, he did not have a great President's Cup and have a bad taste in their mouth, and maybe won't play him this week. But he's second in the par fives. He's 18th in approach. He's 10th in birdie or better. He's a top 10 player in this field when you just go back over 36 rounds. And, what I like to do with these, swing season events is, instead of looking at recent form, like, last 24 is, I think I mentioned this last week, is just kind of taking a step back and looking more at the long-term class and pedigree of a player. And so I just think what Pendrith did, way back, going back into the summer, I think we should value that here. And so I do like him. Now, I'll say one quick thing on Dean Burmeister. As much as I loved him last week, and I don't mind him this week, I think he's still at a reasonable price at 8,500. But I think the main thing he struggles with is his approach play. Mm-hmm. And Robbie Baroff on Twitter, he's a great follow. We kind of talked about this a little bit, but he does play well on these easy scoring courses, but with approach being his main weakness, that's kind of the main reason that I'm going to be off him here. And so, I do like him. And I did like him as an outright until, I talked to Robbie about it, but I'm going to stay away from Burmeister this week. So,
yeah, I mean, he's 71 on Bet Rivers, right? So it's a nice value play. 70-1 isn't bad for someone that's won a lot on the South African tour, and I think maybe once or twice on the Euro tour. I'm not sure, but he hits it a country mile. So I think maybe, you can get away with a bit of the approach play being a bit of a downward piece of his game. He's going to be hitting shorter clubs than everyone else into these greens anyway. So hopefully that can separate him a little bit from them. And I think Pendrith is going to be a popular play because there's not necessarily that many people that like absolutely stick out around him, right? I mean, if he was up in the north part of this 8K range, kind of bottom of the nines, I think he's an absolute smash play from DFS, but he's going to be high owned, I think, this week. And we've got 3 guys. We'll jump into this range here quickly because we've got Denny, JT, and Bezzy, all 3 in a row sitting right by each other underneath Dean. And I know all 3 of those guys aren't necessarily the best approach players in the world, but they can hit good irons, and man, when they putt, they can putt. So I think if they go and do their safe approach play thing and just start getting freaky hot with that putter on greens that we've seen guys absolutely go nuclear on, I don't know. I was thinking about just throwing all 3 of those dudes in my lineup and hoping for 2 of them just to go bananas on the greens, right? Because they're decent ball strikers. They're also not the longest. So this course can really help nullify that lack of distance off the tee for them. I don't know. I've got those 3 highlighted, and I'm kind of curious. I think you could probably get away with under 20% owned total for all 3 of those dudes coming, when push comes to shove. There's other people that people might like around there. So, yeah, give me some takes on the bottom of the 8K range, Aaron, and any that I missed earlier up top that you wanted to share.
Yeah, so I am completely fading this range. And yeah, it kind of comes down to what you said. Like when you investigate further and you dig into the numbers and you look at the proximity ranges from 100 to 150, it's red for all these guys. When you go from starting with Burn, actually, if you want to go up to Siwoo Kim, who, he's a guy I haven't made my mind up yet. You saw the emotion at the President's Cup, how much he was into it.
With the broomstick.
Yeah. And he did show a lot of improvement. So, if he can handle that, and, he might end up getting into my lineups. But when you go down from Burmeister, it's just red for these wedge ranges. And so, each of these guys, they do certain things well. Like, obviously McCarthy with the putter can get hot. JT Poston is one of the best par 5 players in the field, also a great putter. I think Bezadenhout is much better on tougher scoring courses, and his approach play has somewhat slipped a little recently. Maverick McNeely is just kind of in a funk. I mean, he's 120th in approach in this field. I think Keith Mitchell might be the one guy I play. And of course, his big advantage is off the tee. He's one of the best in the world at that. But, I think that this course where it plays to everybody kind of mitigates that advantage a little bit for him. So he might be the one guy I come to because I do think he has a lot of good class. But yeah, I'm kind of skipping this. And another reason I'm skipping this is because there are so many guys I like in this kind of mid to upper 7K range that I'm going to focus on.
And just looking at the ownership of this bottom of the 8K range, just looking at these raw numbers that I'm getting from the only site that's got numbers out there right now, and from Siwoo all the way down to Keith Mitchell, no one's above 7%. So I think, the industry's kind of in agreement with you there that it's a range that you most likely need to want to fade, but there are guys in here that can perform and hopefully, if you're looking to get a little aggressive, you can go there. And also, what is your take, Ron, on this course being so low scoring? When you have to make so many putts and make so many birdies, is there a certain strategy that you're adopting from a player's like an aggressiveness for chalk, or, I know you're big fan of Cantley and Im, but I'm just thinking now, like when you have to make that many birdies, a lot can go wrong, right? Just have one bad putting day and all of a sudden you're like 6 shots behind. So
yeah, I mean, it's definitely tricky because, like we talked about earlier 2 years ago, like you could have been 6 under on Friday and missed the cut, so you really have to go low here. You really have to catch fire. On that, one thing I probably will do is I'm trying to spread my player pool out a little bit more than I usually do.
Okay.
I mean, I'm definitely attacking the approaches or the opportunities game category. I'm really attacking that in par 5 because I think if you can take advantage of the par 5s, the par 4s and the par 3s are easy enough where even if you get away with parring those, I think you can really take advantage of the par 5s. You can make up for any lack of scoring on those other 2 groups of holes. So those are kind of the main things I'm looking at here. If you're good, getting your approach shots close enough to the hole where even if you're a bad putter like a Griot or a Hoagie, as long as you get in that range, and these greens are pure. These are pure bent greens. They're going to be running slower than normal. And so there's not a lot of undulation to them. So I think some of these, bad putters, could, if they string some putts together, could get hot on the greens. And so that's kind of how I'm determining that, kind of looking at those two main stat categories, par fives and opportunities gained.
Okay. No, I love it. I'm in agreement with that too. So we got a very chalky Thomas Dietrich, who seemed to let a lot of people down last week too. Starting off the 7K range, we got Mito, Ricky, KH Lee, TPC Lee, and Adam Hadwin, Taylor Moore, Seamus Powers, Matt Kuchar, Nick Hardy, all at the top of the 7K range, going down to the middle. Mentioning Adam Hadwin's name, I think, is a perfect example, as well as Keegan Bradley, who was saying we were guys that we thought had a potential to bounce back to their baseline after having a time off. And guess what? I faded Keegan Bradley with Scott Stallings and Taylor Montgomery in matchups, and I lost both of them with both of those guys finishing 9th and 13th. Keegan over the weekend absolutely destroyed me, and I now hate him even more than I did when I had him on outright bets and he lost to Max Homa. Anyway, I digress. KH Lee, TPC Lee, I know he's one of your favorites, Ron. Are we going to him this week, or what's the story with him?
Yeah, I couldn't believe he was, odds of 90-1 on Bet Rivers. This is again a great course for him. I think he's a great value at 7,700. I mean, this guy was just on the President's Cup team. He's won multiple times. When you look at his numbers, they're kind of middling. 50th in approach. But he's not horrible at anything either. Yeah. So I think he, just that range he's in at 7,700 here. Obviously the TPC thing is real. Like I need to dig deeper into the actual numbers, but the last time I looked, he was way above his baseline on these types of courses, that are more easy scoring. So I do love him here. I do like Dietrich this week. I think when you look at just overall, obviously he's played a lot of events on the World Tour, but his last 5 events, PGA, when you just look PGA and the DP World Tour, he's finished 12th, 5th, 12th, 34th, and 10th. And when you look at his metrics, he doesn't really have a weakness. The last 2 events he's gained in every strokes gained category, at the Sanderson and at the Fortinet. He's also gaining 1.48 strokes on these easy scoring courses. So, I think he does tend to play better, kind of these wide open events. So I do like Dietrich a lot. I just think that, the class he brings from playing in overseas events, I do like that. I don't understand Ricky Fowler's price here. I know he's gotten changes, swing coach, new caddy. He did finish high at the Fortinet, but I just can't play him at that price. I will say this. I know Mito has burned a lot of people, okay? But he is a top 5 player in my model for the week. And again, I'm looking more at longer-term form here, of course.
Yeah.
But 3rd in approach, 1st in opportunities gained, 4th in birdies, 18th on the par 5s. From those wedge ranges, he's the 9th best player in the field from 100 to 150. So I just think 78 is a misprice, and I will be attacking that number and playing. And I don't know what his ownership is at. I don't know if you have anything on that. So yeah, it's not, again, I think people are kind of not playing him.
They'll go to Dietrich instead for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. And Ricky Fowler's getting some steam too, from what I hear. So, he's a guy who I think could really go overlooked here.
Okay.
And one more guy, actually, what are we going to here? 75 or?
Yeah. We just kind of in that range. Stop at 76. I've got some I want to chat about.
Yeah, I'll go through these quickly. But Seamus Power made the 3rd most birdies in the entire Sanderson field last week. Last year, he was 17th in the entire tour in par 5 scoring. So, he may be ready to take his game back to the level we saw last year. I love Matthew Neesmith, 9th at the Sanderson. He gained in the 2 categories I'm focusing on as far as approach and putting. He gained 9.3 strokes last week. Of course, the course history, 18th, 8th, 14th here. He was really hot on Sunday. I think he shot 8 under par on Sunday. I think his irons, going back to, I think he's kind of very similar to Hoagie here. I think his elite iron play is the difference here. Kurt Kitayama, another Vegas guy. He's made the cut in 6 of his last 7 events. He's got 4 top 20s. He's been playing all over the world. His last start in Italy, I think 2 weeks ago, or it might have been last week, he gained over 12 strokes ball striking. So I think Kurt Kitayama is a guy with that iron play again. And then I'll finish with Nick Hardy.
Okay, cool.
Fifth last week. He's gained 11 plus strokes on approach combined in his last 2 events. And so again, I'm kind of really, as you can see, targeting players who are showing good iron and able to kind of get close to these holes as far as those proximity numbers that we talked about earlier.
Absolutely. I was going to mention Nick Hardy as a nice pivot for Matthew Neesmith, who they seem like they're very similar kind of players with exceptional ball striking capabilities, and Nick might be going at half the ownership of Matthew there. So I was liking him a lot. I second him with you there. And then Matt Kuchar is going to be an interesting play for me this week, because I think, when you think of him, he plays well on those Texas courses, and I think maybe kind of like going to a desert type course that could be a similar type of vibe. Not the longest golf course in the world. Suits up for Matt Kuchar just to make a bunch of putts, right? Around the greens, need good play there, good putting. And his approach play has kind of been not too shabby, over the last little while. So love some Matt Kuchar. I was looking at Seamus's numbers because I'm a big Seamus fan. Didn't gain a single time, not a single round did he gain on approach last week, and still made all those birdies. So it's an interesting conundrum there for Seamus, right? I don't know, had a bit of the luck of the Irish going for him. One name I'm going to mention is Lucas Herbert. Sneaky little player as well, very good putter, horrible proximity numbers on approach. So I don't know. I love him from a putting perspective, and he's going to be one of the lowest owned guys in this range. Mark Hubbard, I've got an outright on at $7,400. I think that's all it's going to do there. I think he's going to be super chalky here unless you want to use him to like anchor your lineup. Put him in all of them or most of them, and then kind of free up some room for yourself at the top of the board. And then we go down to like people like Andrew Putnam, who's I've been riding him for a while now, and he's been really rewarding me for doing that. Kevin Streelman, also another guy that's been doing quite nicely lately. Shorter courses, he's not too shabby at $7,300, low ownership, 3%-ish area. And then Benny On to round out towards the bottom of this range here. Benny On has played really well to Fortinet, and then he broke a lot of people's hearts at the the Sandersons. So he's playing good golf. We know he can play. He's electric. He can fire up whenever he can, and it's looking like he's going to be the forgotten son of the Corn Ferry Tour guys in this area. Yeah, so I'm definitely going to be going back to him, especially with how well he was playing on the Corn Ferry Tour. So one miscut isn't going to deter me from these guys. I'm going to plant my flag and really go to them there. Go ahead, Ron. I got a few more guys towards the bottom of the 7s and top of the 6s, but share your thoughts on this range from Mark Hubbard all the way down to around about Adam Svensson area.
Yeah, Mark Hubbard might be the biggest misprice on the entire slate here. He's first in approach for me. Just his wedge game has come on so strong recently from, those key numbers. He's 6th in the field. Of course, he's always been a good putter. He's putting himself in position with the approach play. And so again, when you combine the approach play and the putting, I would expect ownership to get up there a little bit, but he's definitely an example of good chalk for me. I think Gary Woodland is priced a little too low as well, just based on his pedigree. His approach, he's top 30 in the field in approach. His putter has kind of been middling, but, I think in this type of field that's wide open and on a course where you don't have to bomb it. Again, I always like Gary Woodland on those types of courses. I like Chris Kirk, another guy who's kind of just solid, wedge player, can sink putts. Going down here, obviously Marty Laird's going to be the course history guy. Of course, his game, a lot of struggles recently. Just looking at the numbers, obviously the putter has failed him continually. He's not really a great par 5 scorer either, but just kind of something happens when he comes to this course. I mean, when you look 11th last year, obviously he won this event back in 2021. So I think kind of what I talked about last week and you talked about earlier, when you get kind of low into this range, may not have the best form, but just you kind of banking on that course history to come through. Obviously, Adam Svensson is a guy who kind of keep going back to here. He never seems to get the job done, but his price isn't going up either. He's still sitting there at 7,200. So I think he's a guy who could pop at a course like this. S.H. Kim. He's a guy who, most people don't know about. And I am high on a lot of these Koreans this week. Sung Jae and then Tom Kim, and I do like SH Kim. And shout out to Kenny Kim, who great Twitter follow again. He's on board this week as well.
With all the Koreans.
With all the Koreans.
Sign me up for all the Koreans.
Yep. But no, I think he's a guy who would fly under the radar because, most people, they see S Kim and they think, well, let's not see Woo Kim. So who is this guy? And so, but I think he's shown a lot of potential, and maybe you can talk. He was one of the Corn Ferry guys, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So
I wasn't too familiar with him. He never really popped much at all. And then seems like he showed up to the PGA Tour and decided to play on the big stage. And he's been playing fantastic. I think he kind of had a bit of a bad Sunday from what I was seeing. But one of the Corn Ferry Tour guys that I have been riding has been Robbie Shelton. And I think he's made back-to-back cuts for me in this price range, $7,100. And when you look at easy courses, he's really good on those. And when you look at converting birdie looks, he did it the best on the Corn Ferry Tour, even better than Taylor Montgomery. He was converting about 38% of his birdie looks. So when he can go low, he can go low. And he's made 2 cuts in a row now, and hopefully he's got the jitters out. And I want to start seeing his ceiling come into play at $7,100. And then another guy, you mentioned Seamus Power making the 3rd most birdies or whatever. Harris English made like 12 birdies in the first 2 rounds and missed the cut, or some bizarre, like not 12. I think it was like 8 or 9, or some crazy number, and made a triple and 2 doubles or something, and absolutely put himself out of the mix. Let's go back to Harris. If he can avoid those blow up holes, totally down for a little sneaky Harris English action down at the bottom. Yeah. $7,100 for a guy that we know can win golf tournaments when he's firing up. And he seemed like the upside's there. What's the deal with the consistency? Happy to take a gamble on that at $7,100. And if he's going to be less than 5% owned, hell yes, let's go there. Takes in Harris?
Harris English is someone who I've played the last few weeks, and it hasn't gone well, as you said.
Okay.
So, but again, I think if you're this low, everybody knows how good he was, going back, I don't know what, 12, 18 months. So the question for me is, can he go low enough? And he has struggled on this course with, he's missed 3 of his last 4 cuts. So personally, I'm not going back to that well. I'd much rather look at a guy like, a Callum Tarrant, who, seems like he's a scorer. Although his wedge numbers are not great, but just when you look at the other ones, the chances gained, birdie or better, approach play, he's 21st in the field. I would rather go to a guy like him, even a Justin Lauer, who has shown that he can go pretty low as well when he needs to, and can get really hot with the putter. So those would be my other 2 guys here at the bottom of this range.
Yeah, I second Justin Lauer as well, because I had him and Sam Burns in 70% of my lineups, and they both finished like outside the top 30. They were looking like they were going to do some stuff and then didn't. But he's knocking, and his floor seems like it's really good right now for Justin Lauer. And I think he's going to win a tournament this year. He putts really well, so good putters win tournaments sometimes. So that's kind of what we're looking for there. And then Zhichang Do, I always mention his name, Marty Do, the other Marty in the field. Little sneaky play between Lee Hodges and Callum Tarrant. Like him a lot. We'll see what he can get up to. And then we get into the 6K range. And I'm going to rattle off 3 South Africans, or 2.5 South Africans. MJ Duffy, Gary Kigo, and Rory Sabatini. I like those 3 guys here. MJ is a king of easy courses, typically. The game seems a little off right now, but these are all guys in the 6K range. I'm not going to be having like super high exposure to them, probably 10, 15% on my lineups maximum, and just hoping that they can pop, because those are the difference makers for you down here. It's the way to go. MJ is a birdie machine, dominates the par 5s, typically putts quite nicely on bent, but recently his putting has been atrocious. So hoping for a bounce back from MJ Duffy. And then I know Rory Sabatini was right in the mixture last year, and Garrick Higo played some really good golf across the board. All departments of his game were firing last week, and I'm curious to see. It might seem like you're chasing an instant performance, but a good performance after a long break is always nice to see, because it means that maybe this is something he's been working on, and he's been grinding away in the off season. He hasn't had a chance to do that on tour, figured his stuff out, went back home, checked the coach out, see what Garrick's up to. I like him a lot this week.
Yeah. There's two guys really in this top of this 6K range that and again it's going back to kind of pedigree and I know he's the guy who frustrates people because he's like up and down and he's been a lot of down lately, but Matt Wallace at 6,900. Again, I think as wild as he is off the tee at times, again with the lack of water hazards and a lot of these guys can clear these fairway bunkers off the tee. I think it's not going to hurt him that much here. He is a really good par 5 player and top 10 in the field. He's 42nd in approach. He prefers bent greens. He is really good from that wedge range. He is 9th in the field for me from 100 to 150. And of course, his results are really up and down when you look at his combined PGA Tour and DP World Tour game log. But I really love him. I love Chris Gotterup. I think people maybe a little sour on him as well because I know he was heavily owned in a lot of these other events when you were talking before the FedEx Cup playoffs. But he's obviously he's known as a bomber, so he can handle the distance part and get himself in position here with these shorter wedges. And if you look, he's pretty decent in that wedge range, and he's actually gained an approach in 7 of his 10 events that he's played. So I think Gotterup at 68, I mean that's a pretty good value for me. I think Patrick Rogers is another guy who, obviously the wedge range is troublesome, but that was an issue last week. And, again, I think he finished in the top 40 last week. And again, if you're telling me even this week, if a guy's going to finish top 30, top 40 at 6,800, I'm probably going to play him. So I think Patrick Rogers is a fit as well. And those are kind of my guys I like at the top there.
Back to Patrick Rogers, huh?
Yep. 68. I mean, his price keeps dropping.
That price is nuts. And I think that suits his style of play. Because I was looking at that ceiling stuff we've spoken about before with your 75th percentile versus your baseline. And Patrick Rogers' gap between his floor and his ceiling is like one of the tightest on tour. He doesn't have a lot of up and down. His floor is super high. His ceiling is kind of low relative to the rest of his game. So I love him in this range. Absolutely. And then there's just one guy I want to mention before we take our picks, but in the top and the bottom of the sandwich here. And I want to bitch about him for a little bit, and it's Augusto Nunes. I bitched about him the last time when he parred both the par 5s coming in and missed the cut by 1. This time, I checked my phone out. He's -6 with 7 holes to go. I'm like, whoo, this guy's going to $6,300, 1% owned. Let's have ourselves a weekend. Double, par, bogey, double, misses the cut by 1 again. Absolute meltdown on the back 9. I'm going back to him. This is ball number 3 I'm throwing. If we strike out here, I'm done with this dude. But he led the Corn Ferry Tour in greens in regulation run. At a course like this where you got to pound greens and hit him close, I love his game. He's missed the cut by 1 in epic fashion now. So I think that's keeping him off the radar. I think he just needs to make a cut and then let himself blossom. So he's my secret sneaky play at the bottom here that's broken my heart twice in a row. We're going back. We love Grillo. We can go back for punishment quite easily these days. So
you're so
any takes deep and dark in the bottom of the dumpster here, Ron? Any guys under like $6,700 that you liking?
Yeah, this is kind of my course history range mostly. So, Harry Hall, another Vegas guy, he's not been playing good recently, but he finished 8th here last year. So I think he's worth a flyer, maybe 5 to 10% of your lineups. Adam Schenk, 3 straight top 27s here. Loves this course. You go even lower. I mean, Patton Kizzire has sank to the depths of, oh my goodness, 6,300. But again, he's got a 4th place finish here a few years ago, 24th 2 years ago. There's a quote I found that I read the quote actually in the beginning. When we get into these putting contests, he can get as hot as anyone on the greens. And so if he can just dial in those approach ranges at 6,300, you never know. You may catch the old Patton Kizzire. So
lightning in a bottle, baby.
Yep, lightning in a bottle. So yeah, I mean, I think Higo's interesting just because of the performance last week. He just tends to pop out of nowhere. He has like 7 missed cuts in a row. But yeah, that wraps it up for me. So love that 7K range for sure.
Yeah, I agree. And there's enough enough stuff to not have to really go into the 6K range unless you reading my Corn Ferry Tour article that I have pinned to the top of my profile. Anyway, shameless plug there. Talk to me about where we want to cut this range off. Give me your top favorite player and your bottom favorite player in this week's slate.
Yeah, so 7,600 and above. I've got to go Tom Kim. I just think he's such an exceptional talent. And I just think this course fits him perfectly. And you just look at the recent play as well. I know the ownership is probably going to get up there, but I just think this is just too good of a tournament for him. I can't pass it up.
Yeah.
And so he's my top play. And then if we're going under, there's a lot of guys in that 7 range, like I said.
Not allowed to tell me it's Mark Hubbard.
Yeah, no, it's not Mark Hubbard because I think his ownership's going to get up there. It's Kurt Kitayama. I'm going to go Kitayama here. I just think, his class and his approach play, and I think the ownership, hoping it doesn't get that high. So he's the guy. I love Neesmith. I love Hubbard, but I'm going to stick with Kitayama here.
Okay. I am going to start from the bottom because I still haven't made up who my top guy is yet. But while I'm telling you about Robbie Shelton at $7,100, he's my Corn Ferry baby, my little darling that's gone under the radar with his buddy Taylor Montgomery, who's been absolutely killing it. Robbie Shelton, $7,100, $2,400 cheaper than his buddy. And he's made both cuts and he's got immense upside. He's shown it on the Corn Ferry Tour. It's time for him to really shine. And now, while I'm under the gun, I obviously have that outright on Tom Kim. So just to be a little different to you, I really like him. I'm going to go with Emiliano Grillo. We got to support our guy. I know there's a lot of red flags. I know the finishing it up is tough. He's won a golf tournament before. I know he's done that before. So he can win a golf tournament. His putting has been great. The last 8 events now, I think he's been gaining on the green. So it's only just stacking good putting performances. And his irons really kind of started to show up. That's why he was in the mix last week, was mainly because of his irons. So love Emiliano Grillo this week. Hopefully with less expectations, he can do it for us and just get it done. So yeah, that concludes it for us today. Anything else you want to add, Ron?
No, I look forward to it. We are here at Betsperts Golf. We are making progress on our our custom splits tool and our PGA Tour database that we're putting together. So hopefully real soon we'll be able to start showing that off a little bit more. Other than that, I'm looking forward to another exciting swing season event here.
Me too. Cool. I never brought any water with me, so my throat is parched. Thank you for your time, Ron. Thank you for watching, guys. Really appreciate it. We'll check you guys next week for the CJ Cup. Till then, later.